Good afternoon, everyone. All right. So let us all chant Namo Tassa before the beginning of the Dhamma talk. One moment. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So this Dhamma talk today has been sort of organized and also sponsored to pass merits to Mrs. Leela Ilapperma, Victor Ilapperma, and Burley Ilapperma, which is also sponsored by our friends Noeline Leela Sena, Sunetra Gunaratna, Mala Veer Singh, and Charlie Ilapperma. So the sharing of Dhamma excels all other gifts. Hence, let us listen to some Dhamma. According to the teachings of the Buddha, and according to the path that we follow in the spirit of the teachings of the Buddha, we are taught a pathway that leads to a form of enlightenment, a freedom from the cycle of rebirth, existence, rebirth and death, samsara, all sort of pointing towards this path which liberates the being from a position that that being has been stuck in or stuck within since his journey within samsara. And however we might try to sort of insinuate or put or word ourselves, the true sort of sense of being stuck in samsara is taught by the sort of the teachings upon which the Buddha teaches what prapancha is. Prapancha, tanha, ditthimana arises at times or arises within the mind of an individual, a being, whoever this being might be, whether a being of Trihetuka Pratisandhi or of a lower Pratisandhi. These prapanchas arise within a being to keep the being stuck along the course of rebirth and death. Every time that the being would make some sort of effort to exit samsara, or even the slightest of attempts to sort of cultivate vipassana, cultivate those practices required to gain exit from samsara, the prapanchas would arise, breaking the practice, breaking the vipassana developments, and bringing us back to where we were in the beginning. Today's topic has been or is the Buddha's teachings on Vimokkha. Now, what is Vimokkha? Vimokkha would easily be translated as emancipation. Emancipation sort of rooting from some sort of liberation, which is gained through freeing oneself from a political, a legal system, or belonging towards one of many sets of forms. Emancipation, freedom from something. So what are we exactly, or here in this sense, what are we trying to sort of gain freedom from? Before we come into that, let us talk about, or let us sort of go into the position of the current mind. The mind, the Buddha says, the mind is able to, or the mind, the being works or lives of different objects that arise moment to moment. Mothing mothata, vividakara arabunu ganiming manasa pavathinawa. The mind, in taking these different objects that arise moment to moment through the different gateways that these objects enter the stream of consciousness, the mind finds a way to instill a sense of self in all of these different objects that arise from the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body. And in certain cases, also through the Hadaya Vastu. That is a higher level of delusion. We will come to that. With Chakku Sota Gana Jibha Kaya, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, whenever some sort of object arises, the mind takes hold of this object and sort of instills a sense of self. Hence, with whatever object that arises, we see or we find a way to instill ourselves into that object to then sort of build a sense of my world or my creation within all of these things that we're surrounded with. At a higher sense of delusion, what happens is even when past objects have been cognized or when they are cognized and stored in memory, the mind may at times change these memories according to which they believe it to be true or false, or to suit the mental sort of how they want it to sort of the story to plan out. So we will instigate a story in our minds as well. In that way, the Hadaya Vastu also, they are being sort of changed, or the memory or the way that we sort of, remember things will also change. In any case, we work with these objects, or the being sort of continues along with these different objects. Having done so, the being now, with repetitive objects, the being would find a sense of self with these objects that we have. This can be the appearance, this can be the things that we own, the places that we live, all of these elements of our life, The moment these elements of our life is taken in the sense of self, now we find difficulty in separating from these elements. Why? Because these elements are part of my life. That basis has already been built. Now, that is where the first train of delusion arises, where I am to assume that my life is connected to all of these elements which are around me. Now I find myself burdened by the need to prolong everything which is there around me, the sensations, the feelings, all of those things around me, the consciousness, all of that. Now I find myself burdened. I find myself burdened to keep that going. That is the first position that we find ourselves now losing our sense of freedom within this life. Whereas the self strengthens itself, we find ourselves now bound down to the elements and objects that we have once simply cognized, but now we have found self within those elements in our life. The Buddha teaches us this. The Buddha talks about now, යම්කිසි අරමුණක් හටගත්තා, ඒ අරමුණ කෙරෙහි යම්කිසි ඇලීමක් හටගත්තා, ඒත් ඒ ඇලීම හටගත්තේ නිකන් නෙමේ, ඒ ඇලීම මේ දේ මගේ මම සක සංඥාව පදනම් කරාගෙන තමයි ඒ අරමුණ අපි ගත්තේ. Now within that object, I see me, myself, and I. Now my life is rooted into that object. Now what does the Buddha say? The Buddha preaches that this is the first moment where man loses his sense of free will. We still think we are under the illusion that we still have free will, that I am acting on my own account. But no, your free will has gone since the moment with delusion you attached onto that element and thought that this is me, myself, and I. But we still are or operate under the idea that this is my will. The Buddha then teaches us this. How do we get away, or how do we free ourselves? Now we have the problem. How do we free ourselves? The Buddha preaches something that we've heard so many times. Dana, Sila, Bhavana. Dana, generosity, Sila, morality, and Dana, Sila, Bhavana, meditation. Dana. Dana is the ability to be generous, to give. What do we give? We give the things that we have, the things that we have connected with in a way. The things that we see me, myself within. Things that we have accumulated over the journey of life. It is those things that we give, whether it be in terms of monetary value, cash, currency, through cash donations, or whether it be something of time, something of different value. Regardless of what it is, anything that you say it is yours, giving that is a part of dana, that generosity. What does that generosity entail? It is far more deeper than the simple cultural aspect of what we assume a dana is, surely. This dana is the ability to part with something which is belonging to self. Tamange kela kiena yam kisi vastuwa king when we meng itana dane sampurna venawa. Something that you call yours, giving that something which is yours is generosity. That is why you can't give others things and dana paramita puranna bari, because you can't give another person's something which belongs to another person's and say that you have given a dana. You must give something. Ema karana kattiyat innawa. Right? There are people who do that as well, but that is not the proper dana. You must give what is yours, right? Parting with something which is yours. Why? Because that object is yours. Tamange mamatwයට උපකාර වෙන දෙයක් තමයි දැන් මේ වෙන මිනිස්සෙක්ට දෙන්නේ. That is what makes it so much more difficult to give. The more a person's ego is, the difficult it is to give. If you are giving it properly, without any strings attached, without expecting anything in return, dana is very difficult to give at times. So what is the first step? The Buddha says, dana, give. දැන් මේ මමත්වයේ අපි ශක්තිමත් කරා නම් ඒ ශක්තිමත් කරේ මං වටේ තියෙන මේ වස්තු දීපලත් එක්කනේ. දැන් ඒ දේ දෙන්න දැන්. Give it to other people. Make other people happy. ඔතකොට මොකද තමන්ගේ අර මාන්නයෙන් තමන්ගේ ජීවිතේ පෝෂණය කරපු මේ වස්තු දීපල ටික අපි දෙනවා. මොනවා හේතුවෙන්ද? තමන්ගේ අර මාන්නය කියන දෙය මේ මමත්වයේ පුරණ දේවල් තව weak හෝ ඒ ශක්තිය නැති කරන්න. දානය. මේ දානය, this dana can be fulfilled in many ways. Whether it is the giving to a priest or giving to any other person who needs help, regardless of who you're giving to, the dana must be given in a way that you do not want anything back. The simple fact of it is you do not want anything in return for your generosity. That is paramount. That is paramount. Even when it comes to a mother-child or a parent-child relationship, the same notion applies with unconditional love. Giving, but not expecting anything in return. As there are a lot of mothers here and fathers, of course, we know how difficult that too might be at times, right? That too might be at times. Because even when we give, we at least expect that අපිට ඕන විදිහට හැදෙයි කියලාවත් අපි හිතනවා. Right? අපිට ඕන විදිහට හැදෙයි කියලා හරි හිතනවා. However, dana in that sense is the giving of anything that weakens self. So we give. Dana. As we give, remember, within this Panchabokara Bhumi or this sensuous sphere, we have a mind and a body. The mind and the body is sustained through these different elements of cognition, which is filled through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body. We thrive on physicality and physical elements. These physical elements is that which we give. As we give and continue to give, the Buddha says, as the mind gets used to the life or living a life of generosity where you give, the ego reduces. You're able to, the mind based upon that kusala, the mind enters a stage of samadhi, and with that samadhi, you can continue on to nirvana. Now, within what we cultivate with that trihetuka kusala is the ability to now take up behaviors that help our practice of now Sila, Dana, Sila. What is Sila? What is Sila? Sila has many different definitions in Buddhism. It does not only have one, it has many definitions, right? Many definitions. One definition of Sila is යම් කිසි ක්‍රියාවකින් ගුණයක් වර්ධනය වෙනවා නම් එය සීලයක් වශයෙන් නම් වෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ, what does that mean? If through some action arises guna, good qualities, that can be named as sila. Then samar thanvala, to some, they might pronounce that they have sila because they do not do these things. However, because of the lack of guna, that sila or that sense of morality is not fulfilled, or is not wholesome, or is not complete. That is what it means. So then what is the other sense of sila? Sila is then also defined in this manner. A practice which does not do harm to oneself, neither does it do harm to another. A practice that does not do harm to oneself, neither does it do harm to another, is named Sila, is called Sila. If we take the Pancha Sila, the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, the 10 precepts, right? Forget the 10 because that is more monastic code of conduct. But if we take the 5 or the 8, we realize that going into or having a sense of morality is very important in sort of cultivating or bringing about a life that is not blameworthy. When life is not blameworthy, we are able to truly have or truly connect with beings, with people who are themselves respect worthy, and also we become people who are worthy of respect as well. This is to say, or this is not to say that we should chase behind or we should really be caring about what people say about us, but rather being social beings, being the social beings that we are, we cannot live without people. Even monks who live in the most isolated of conditions will have to at one point come out of the forest even to get their meals, right? We cannot live fully isolated. The company that we keep or the company that we have in our life negates whether we will have comfortable abidings or whether we will have a lot of problems. And that is the truth. If we have friends who are not truly your friends, you will have a very difficult time with yourself, with your life. You will not even properly have the comfort to go out with people, knowing that these people have your back. This is a big problem. You can feel a sense of deep isolation when we do not have the trust, or we do not have the ability to have trust in the people that we have around us. That is where Sila comes in. Dana, Sila. When Sila arises, or when Sila is present in our life, we start attracting those same energies into our lives. Right? When Sila is not present also, you will attract those energies into your life. Now let me tell you, this cannot be taken at face value. This is nothing of this. None of this can be taken in face value. We are talking about inert vibrations, right? You can go through a spur in your life where you're going through a lot of difficulty. And during this time that you're going through a lot of difficulty, you keep on doing or making a lot of mistakes, right? This does not necessarily mean that you have now become a person who cannot be saved. This doesn't essentially make you a bad person, right? Because the Buddha talks about, when he refers to people who cannot be saved, he talks about people who commit wrong and then people who are rotten to the core. Commit wrong and rotten to the core, two ways. What does this mean? What this means is a person can do things which are considered wrong, right? Can do things which are considered wrong. However, it is not supported by the wrong view that the wrong is right. Do you understand? Wrong actions can be done at times of difficulty or at times of challenge. However, one does not consider the action of wrong or the wrong action is right. Drushtiya naha. The wrong view is not there, right? When the wrong view is there, this happens. When the wrong view is there, the person who commits wrong thinks that the wrong is right. He finds no fault in the wrong that is committed. So much so, the person goes on to assume that he is right or she is right, the person is right. It is everyone else who can't understand, or everyone else who has a weaker mentality. So much so, right? It is that person that the Buddha refers to as rotten to the core, according to the Darukandopama Sutra. Remember, this Buddha says there is no use of taking this bark which is floating, or rather at this time it is it's not even floating, it's sinking. Why? Because the innards of this bark is all rotten to the core. Even if you take it out, you can't strip the wood and make anything out of it. There is no use of it. That such a person is a person who does wrong and believes that wrong is right, goes on to think that he is correct and the others are wrong. This doesn't easily happen to a person. But how does this person fall into this track is important to note. How? Wrong, right? Commits wrong, but commits wrong that the person can't come out of. Now, this is a very important point, everyone. Sorry. Commits wrong that the person can't come out of. What does this mean? The person does something which is wrong. Having done something which is wrong, there is no sort of, maybe there are legal inferences, right? Legalities to face. Maybe it's that kind of a wrong, right? Now, there is no, it's clear as day, this is wrong. So now, this being, this person who has done wrong must also live with themselves, right? Must continue to live. So what do we start? We start saying, we start finding ways to tell ourselves that wrong is fair. That wrong is Mava me tatveta patkare kauda. Right? We start, because that is done by not the wrong, the ego. Because the ego wants to always come out smelling like roses, you see. So the ego can be full of absolutely unfavorable material. However, it wants to somehow come smelling out like flowers. So what do? We blame the world. We blame circumstance. We blame the unfortunate instances that we were born into. We blame our parents. We blame our kittas and our kirikittas. All. We blame every possible option. That is done through the ego. That is done through the ego. Now, how did we get here? How did we get here? Morality. The breach of morality. You keep on doing wrong, you keep on doing wrong, you keep on doing wrong. One fine day, you're going to jump. There is going to be a mistake which happens where you have no consideration, you have no control, and that line is crossed. The line is crossed where it is no longer a breach of just spiritual wrong or sort of wrong that just harms oneself. It harms another person. It harms a society. At that point, it's a little bit too late. Why? Now you have to standardize. Now starts the rotting process. Do you understand? That is what the Buddha says. That is why morality is important. Now, what happens after? This is where the vibrational change happens, everyone. When the rotting process starts, when you have to standardize your actions to tell yourself that it was beyond your control, or to make up an excuse, now that is where your vibration starts to change. Your vibration changes to such an extent, you become, it's like you become repulsive to good people to such an extent. Good people can't get close to you. Good friends can't get close to you. Something about you is off. Now, we have met people like this in our life. We have met, they've not said anything, they've not done anything, but something about their vibration is simply off. And everyone who simply comes into contact here or there, they say, I don't know what it is, but this person is a bit off. But this person might have not even looked at you. But there is something about that person. That is where Sila, we can find this vibrational effect that happens, right? Because as we know, most of us, having learned the Dhamma together, we realize that that there is a rate of forgiveness in Dhamma. There's always allowance of forgiveness. But the moment that we are unable to work for for our progressing within the path, for our continuous development, then there is an effect. Then there is a sense of gravity that we have to think about. Now, when this Sila is practiced, because ego is lessened, we are able to see that, the things that we thought that we need, we do not actually need. We think about taking up practices which are more wholesome, healthy to the heart and body, healthy to the mind, taking up things, doing things which are more wholesome in the sense of bringing happiness and stability into one's life. Hence, you take up Sila, right? You take up these sort of practices which enforces a sense of morality. When a sense of morality is enforced, the mind becomes, or this facilitates, less distractions in mind, right? This first, now I'm not telling this to you as a sense of, as නිකම් පොතකින් බලලා කියනව නෙමෙයි. මේ ඇත්තටම වෙන දේවල්. ඒ කියන්නේ ඇත්තටම වෙන දේවල්. මේක කරන කියන්නේ, if anyone practices this, they will be able to tell these things to you in the same manner, because it actually happens. It actually happens. When you practice Sila, it brings a sense of tranquility to mind. But sometimes practicing Sila is a bit difficult. You need Samadhi, which is going to come. But here what we are talking about is inclination. You're committed towards a wholesome practice, right? The inclination. With that inclination, the clarity appears in mind. Somewhat of a dedication towards clarity appears in mind. When this happens, all of those confusing sentiments of mind which arises from time to time, simply just starts to fade away. You're not even trying to get rid of them. It simply fades away. Bringing a sense of light into our being. And this light, everyone, this light is absolutely life-changing. It is inspiring. It gives us energy to do whatever it is that we want. Some of you here might be actually working towards nirvana. Some of you might just want to get up in the morning or to go to bed at night and simply be happy. And I promise you that this practice would allow you to do that in every sense of the word. It will bring a sense of happiness into your life. Why? Because it allows you to get rid of all of those self-deprecating thoughts, all those disturbing thoughts that tell you otherwise, that tells you that this happiness that we sought out for is to be sought out from the external world. That is what in the first place we were doing wrong. We thought if we did this, if we did that, if we did all of this, if we had all of these things around us in our lives, that we would be happy. But no, that is not true. Hence, we go on from now Sila, with that clarity of mind, we go into Bhavana. And with Bhavana, what happens is, with Bhavana, what starts to happen is the fact that, supported by Dana, that මේ දානයයි සීලය අමතක කරන්න බෑ. මේ දානයයි සීලයි ඒ විදියටම අපි ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියනවා. ඒත් එක්කම අපි භාවනා කරන්න පටන් ගන්න. We start meditating a bit as well. And with this now becomes a superpower on its own. Dana, Sila, Bhavana starts becoming a superpower to support the practice, to be in the present. Now, we always say to support a practice, sorry, this is just, this is just habit. With this practice simply entails the fact of being in the present, right? Simply entails being in the present. Yes, you might think if I am to be in the present, then what is going to happen to what I have to do tomorrow, or the bills that I have to pay, or the work that I have to get done? Fair enough. But this is not about not thinking about the future. This is about knowing what is the future, what is the present, what is the past. This is about being able to know what is in this very moment and what is not of this very moment. And being able to live within this moment where you have control. How could you possibly have control over something that has not arisen? If you're living in the future, in a reality which has not arisen, how in the world are you going to have control over the future? The past has already been written. It has passed. How can we have control over the past? The only position that we truly have any power in is this very present moment. We do not have any power with regards to the future or the past. Our self, this being, is most powerful within the present. Being in the present is that which I then try to cultivate and develop in my life through the practice of bhavana. That is what then the Buddha says, through dana, sila, bhavana comes the freedom that we aspire to attain through the practice. Through the practice. The freedom that I aspire for comes through dana, sila, bhavana. Dana, sila, bhavana. Just like a snake shedding its skin, taking pleasure in the ability to shed the ego. To shed the ego in a manner, every time that you shed it, you are forgiving yourself. You are forgiving yourself. Every time that you shed, you are enabling yourself to accept a bitter part, a dark, a maybe unsavory part, a reality within your life, so that you are able to work with it. Shedding and letting go entails the ability to find solutions, to bring about a change, a position of mind that is truly moving. That is what we try to achieve and attain through our practice. Through our practice. That sense of change. And the thing is, it can be done. It is not a pseudoscience. It can be done. It can be done through practice and commitment towards the path. Now, within this path, when we take the different types of Vimokkha that are present in Buddhism, right? We have the different words that, we've seen. We've seen animitta, a word called animitta Vimokkha, anya Vimokkha, apanita Vimokkha, arahatta Vimokkha, jhana Vimokkha, jnana Vimokkha, sanya Vimokkha, sunyata Vimokkha. Now, shunyata Vimokkha meaning the final sense of Vimokkha that we sort of aspire to achieve and attain. Let us talk about Sanya Vimokkha. Sanya Vimokkha, coming from the Vimokkha Sutra. Sanya Vimokkha, we know Sanya is a part and parcel of Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. These are the 5 aggregates. Sanya, Vimokkha. Now, Sanya, when Sanya arises, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara all have to arise. Meaning, if Sanya perception arises, consciousness has to arise. Consciousness does not arise without Sanya and Vedana, sensations. So with Sanya, Vedana and consciousness has to arise. With Vedana, perceptions and consciousness has to arise. With consciousness, sensations and perceptions has to arise. Right? They have to. It is without one, the other will not arise. So when we look at Sanya Vimokkha, we are referring to, or we are working with 2 different types of conditions. One, the condition of attachment. Ekanne tanhava sa avidyava. Paticcasamuppada. Tanha and avidya, greed and delusion, avidya, condition every element that is cognized by the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body to be taken in a way supporting self. Sakasanya. Sakasanya. So everything that we sort of cognize, that is why Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana becomes the 5 aggregates of clinging, because we cling on to these aggregates and assume it to be supportive of or is me, myself, and I. That is one. Tanha, now working for the Sanya. The other is this. Through habit, we develop modes and patterns of thought. These modes and patterns of thought, through cultivation, strengthens manasikara, which is either yoniso or ayoniso, right attention or wrong attention. Right attention or wrong attention. So sanya, powered by 2, by the panchupadana skandha, the 5 aggregates of clinging, or manasikara, which is either yoniso or ayoniso. These 2 come together. How? These 2 come together. How? Because of cultivation, at times, because of cultivation or owing to cultivation, sanya takes on a habitual route. So if the habitual route, if the route is usually ayoniso, it will take ayoniso. If it is usually yoniso, it will take yoniso. Meaning, if it is usually wrong attention, it will take wrong attention. If it is usually right attention, it will take right attention. Right? When the wrong or right attention is taken, then it will go on to, if it is wrong, it will go on to the sanya, which now aids in the attachment, the clinging, the sankharas, and all of that. If the sanya is now supported with proper mansikara, goes into yonsu mansikara, then the sanya, it could, if we are able to, we can bring it to a level where we stop it from going into the usual ayonsu mansikara, or even promoting the further development of different sankharas. All of which has to happen from somewhere. Where is that somewhere? Dana, Sila, Bhavana. So you see, Even with Paticcasamuppada, if we take Tanha and Avijja, or even if we take Yonisomansikara or Ayonisomansikara, Dana, Sila, Bhavana becomes a wonderful map in order to sort of take our practice forward, to reduce the harshness and the grossness of the attachment and clinging that we have, in order to release ourselves from those bounds, to allow ourselves to go into higher states of mind, into higher states of mind. This is what the Buddha has taught with regards to Vimokkha, right? With regards to Vimokkha. Of course, there is Sunyata Vimokkha and Arhat Vimokkha and all of these things. But in terms of the Vimokkha that mostly applies, or that can be sort of practiced by us, if we are able to target the sanya that arises, if we are able to target the sanya that arises, with the sanya arises the Vedana and the consciousness, in the way that we perceive objects in our life, we will be able to now curtail the sankharas which further lengthen our samsara, and also curtail the hindrances and the negative that arises based upon the world that we live in and the way that we cognize, right? That is what the Buddha has taught with regards to his Sangha, with regards to Vimokkha. And this Vimokkha is truly to be founded within ourselves and nowhere else, in being able to now perform, to excel in our mind, to be able to experience states of mind that were not experienced before, that were not experienced before. And as we let go, sometimes nirvana, nibbana, or the higher states of mind, or states of mind beyond our own usual states, seem so far-fetched, And this is because the Buddha explains, because of the attachment to ego. Because of the attachment to ego, we think that there is nothing further than this sort of cycle that I am in. If we are able to soften that, then we feel a sense of liberation. Now, that is possibly why a lot of young people get into, after their sort of, all of these sort of, stress that people go through. A lot of young people getting into narcotics and drugs and alcohol at this time, to feel a sense of release at the end of the week, on a Friday night, going into a club or some sort of event, taking some drugs, getting drunk, so drunk to sort of forget what they have been going through or what they have to go through. All of these things, look at this, all connected to the inability to truly handle or come into terms with that suffering that we go through on a day in and day out. Right, day in and day out. So we tend to want to forget and sort of have a sense of liberation. Now that forgetting, right, that feeling of being able to forget, there's sort of the lessening of the ego, which allows the being to be more happier, or to the secretion of different other chemicals to allow a being to be happier, the sort of the lessening of the ego centers. All of these experiences can be brought about organically through meditation. It can be brought out through meditation. It can be brought out through meditation. I'm not advocating that we be high on life every single day, but why not if we possibly could, right? Why not if we possibly could? The only thing to say is that the fact that the Buddha taught that path 2,600 years ago, right? 2,600 years ago, the lessening of ego, the beauty of life, and all of that which follows can be done through the practice, right? And what the practice would then sort of take us into those experiences, those vibrations of life in such a manner that we wouldn't even be concerned with the petty sort of happinesses that we would be experiencing, because that happiness that we experience at that level is far more sublime and supreme, right? Far more sublime and supreme. There was this Deshna that I did for Vesak, for a company. And they asked, over these years, what kept you sort of, what made you want to sort of go into robes and, do all of these things? And obviously not something that I had thought about earlier, because they did not give me the questions earlier or anything like that. But what appeared to my mind was this. When I was young and I just started meditating, right? And I didn't know what to do, but I was, I was just 13 or 14, and I just started meditating and doing all of the things through meditation, and I did not have a meditational guide or anything of the sort, but I simply just started meditating with the little books that I was reading at the time. And through the meditation, and this was usually after school, so after prefect's duty and all of that, I would come home and meditate before dinner. And during that time, my meditation would get better and better and better and better. Every single day it would get better, and not because I was not like super virtuous or anything like that, but I was trying, I was committed, right? I was honestly, authentically trying, and I had such a lot of respect towards the Dhamma, such a lot of respect towards the Dhamma, right? Not to say that I was perfect. I was not perfect, but I had a lot of respect. So much respect that the moment that I tell myself, oh, I'm practicing, the mind would just simply go calm. That amount of respect, right? And my meditation would increase up until one fine day, you feel as if, I'm just going on a tangent story, so bear with me. So one fine day, when you're sort of searching and searching in your meditation, you're meditating. And one fine day, as if, there is a curtain in front of you and that veil falls. And the moment that veil falls, you see something, you experience something. And that experience is so profoundly beautiful. You're like, right at the start, you're not even saying, wow, it's like, you can't really put it into words. It's almost as if a moment that veil, that curtain falls, and you have this experience overtaking the whole body. And from that moment, no one needs to tell you, no one needs to explain it to you. No, you don't need to explain it to yourself. This is right. This is the right path. This is what gives you that sense of that level of happiness, because nothing else, nothing else gives you that happiness. And through the years, even, for example, the battle that I had to sort of do to sort of become a monk and get ordained and go to Burma and, do all of that. Every time that it got difficult, I would just remind myself of that moment, the veil falling, right? Just to inspire myself to keep on going. Up until you're in the monastery and you're now cultivating or going into that level and higher, and even a pinch higher or pinch higher, it keeps on getting better and better and better. And you realize now, honestly, authentically, I'm telling you, you realize what a load of nonsense, I'm sorry, what a load of absolute nonsense you've been doing, just holding on to this sort of gross ego, thinking that this is the be all and the end all, because you compare the ego self to that self experiencing that beautiful pleasure of that veil falling, of the ego just being absolutely going into a state that almost feels like the ego is no more, and that beauty that just springs at that moment is so beyond any comparison. So beyond any comparison. And you realize to yourself, you realize for yourself, what a fool I was to think that protecting and sort of, pampering the ego was going to make me feel good, when this feels so unworldly and simply supramundane in its happiness. That keeps you going. So for all of you who, you might be into Buddhism, you might not, you might have just come here because of your family inviting you, because it's like kind of like a family event sort of thing, with the Dhammadana, all of this. But let me tell you, regardless of what faith that you follow, maybe you have no faith or you believe in Buddhism, regardless, start meditating. Start meditating, and you find for yourself, you experience for yourself the depths to which you are able to go, breaking the barriers that you have set for yourself. And when you one day, little by little, when I was younger, it was no more than 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour. But those earlier stages where I saw that whale fall was like between like 30 minutes, right? And when you see that, you will realize for yourself what I am telling to you now. How beautiful. And maybe you're 50 years old, maybe you're younger, maybe you're older, it does not matter. But I ensure you, maybe you've lived an absolute life of luxury, maybe you've not had that much, maybe you come from very humble backgrounds. Regardless, it does not matter. I ensure, I promise you that every experience that you've had in your life will be in a moment surpassed by that beauty of the egoless mind. By that beauty of the egoless mind. And you do not need anything. Everything else in this panchavokara, this sensuous world told you, you need this and this and this and this to be happy. This practice, you don't need any of that. You just sit down and be in the present, observe the breath or the Vedanas, whatever technique that you can do. And you just meditate. Start with 5 minutes, start with 10 minutes, because at the end of the day, when you sort of switch on your TV and watch news, when you sort of do anything, even if you're going to work and you're in a very highly competitive sort of arena, right? You realize day in and day out, getting up in the morning, doing all of the things that we do in order to live, we are absolutely dying to live every single day. And you realize at the end of your journey, maybe in your work, you have, in your careers, you have, if you're in finance, you might know names of people who've passed away. Time goes by and, people forget, right? People forget. And even as generations go by, just like, I do not know the name of, my great grandparents or my grandparents before that, or no, it's like the world moves on. So rather than trying to build a life that satisfies the world, make use of this life to liberate yourself. Because at the end of the day, after your death, yes, we will mourn. I might probably do your 7 months, 7 day, or 3 months, or 1 year. I probably will. I ensure you I'll do a good job at it as well. But afterwards, people will forget. We will all die and we will become no more. So at this point in time, with this life that we have, let us try to do something in a way, whilst of course supporting our family, showing love to our families, all of that. But don't be overly concerned about sort of satisfying everyone in the world. Try to sort of kindle that fire of enlightenment within yourself, to be able to live a life that that you can actually say, I've lived it to the fullest in every sense of the word. That you're not having the stress of all of the things that we would usually have the stress of, by simply being in the present. by being in the present and ensuring having the confidence of mind, even when it comes to facing an experience as adverse and difficult as death, where you have the confidence in mind to say, I'm not afraid, because I know the life that I've lived a good one, and I've done enough good. And my mind, I've been committed to that good. And my next destination is going to be good as well. That confidence. So with that said, let us share merits with those that we have organized this Dhamma talk to share merits with. Sponsored by Noeline Sunetra Mala and Charlie Ila Peruma, we pass merits to the departed, beloved Mother Leela Ila Peruma, Brother Victor Ila Peruma, and Sister Berlin Ila Peruma. Wherever these individuals might be, whether they need merit or whether they are living most happily wherever they might be, with the power of these merits, may they be surrounded by Kalyana Mitras who show and guide them in the path towards Nirvana. May they be surrounded with blessings that would enable them to live happily and healthily wherever they might be. May they have the protection, of guardian deities, Samya Drishtika deities, and all the deities possible. And if they are able to, may they shine their light upon us and guide us, if they are able to, upon the pathway towards Nirvana. To all those beings of this samsara, of this birth and of our previous births, wherever they might be, may they all benefit with the collective merits that we all accumulate. The Dhamma group here study Dhamma 6 days a week, spend the rest of their time revising the Dhamma, meditating and doing all of these things, and also getting harassed by me. But in all of those occasions, all of the collective merit that we all accumulate, let us share with all of our relatives, known and unknown, near and far, those who need merit and those who need merit and don't need merit, whatever beings are. With this merit, may they all be well and happy, free and liberated, and may they find their way towards Nirvana wherever they might be. All right, everyone. So let us chant together. Idam me jnati nang hotu sukhita hontu jnateo. 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 Akasattha ca bummatta deva naga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sasanang. Akasattha ca bummatta deva naga mahindika punyantang anumoditva Chiran rakkantu desanang. Akasattha ca bummatta deva naga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu tvang sadhati. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining into the Dhamma Desana. And I will see all of you, or some of you, for the evening meditation. Have a pleasant rest of the evening, afternoon. Take care, and Teruvan Sannai.